think the royal family are probably in one of the most dangerous positions they've been.
Andrew always denied any allegations of wrongdoing, but you very much get the sense in the last few days especially, that dam has burst.
And that's bad for the royals, because if you start scratching the surface of privilege and entitlement.
Are we heading towards the end of the monarchy or vast changes in the monarchy?
Look at this headline, like it's crazy to even wrap your mind around it.
It just gets grottier.
It does get grottier, and again, it goes to that idea of trust.
This family is absolutely toxic from the inside.
Welcome to Royal Exclusive, where there's a crisis at the palace after another dramatic week following the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, with plans to remove him from the line of succession. I'm Matt Wilkinson, Royal Editor of The Sun, and joining me this week is the Daily Mirror's Royal Editor and author Russell Myers and news.com.au Royal Correspondent Bronte Coy to discuss all of this and more, including, yes, that photo. You know the one. Right, guys, welcome. Look, this has been a hugely dramatic week, another historic week, and I've got to, before we get into everything that's happened, are you calm?
You are a calming influence, Matt.
Are you calm? Because I'm astonished by Prince William this week. This is just a couple of days after the arrest, which we'll get into the arrest and everything that's happened with Andrew. But Prince William was at the BAFTAs and he said, asked about a movie he'd seen, and he said, I need to be in quite a calm state, and I'm not that at the moment. What does this say about the royals, do you think, at the moment? Because look, we're finding this stressful, we're finding this tough. How do you think they are, Bronte?
Well, he was obviously talking about Hamnet, the movie that's been nominated for so many awards, but it's very emotionally distressing. I was quite surprised because even in that context, it is an incredibly telling remark because it's so accurate for what has been happening these last few days. It is astonishing. I know it's been almost a week, but I still can't quite believe we saw those Andrew arrested headlines. I can't believe it's actually come to pass. And surely, especially given the fact that we're hearing the royal family was given no notice either, they're reacting in real time as well. And so that was just a couple of days later, and I think it was just incredibly telling.
We're in a situation here now where the royals are out working, they're trying to keep calm and carry on. We'll get a bit more into this later, but even the King's statement after Andrew was arrested, he said, let me state clearly, the law must take its course. Meanwhile, my family and I will continue in our duty and service to you all, Russell. Is that the right approach, do you think, at the moment?
Yes, it has to be. I mean, they have to be seen to be getting out, as you say, keep calm, carry on. I mean, what else can they do? I mean, the crisis is very much at the palace. I don't think it will serve anyone to put that out into the public space. I mean, there's been a lot of calls about whether the King should make a public address on this. Let's not forget that there has been an arrest, but there are no charges. These are allegations. And there's been allegations, numerous ones, for many, many years. So you can't get any firmer from the King saying, the law must take its course. So let's see what happens. I think that this will be a very long and drawn-out process. I mean, there's an awful lot of investigations ongoing at the moment. So a knee-jerk reaction probably wouldn't serve anyone at the moment.
You come on this week, special guest, first time on the show.
Yes,
we're
thank
absolutely
you for having
happy
me.
to have you. But also, you brought a book out this week. I think it's come out today.
Ooh,
I think
well
we're
done.
very excited
Yes,
about it.
yeah.
This is the intimate inside story, William and Catherine. But in that book, you mentioned that before this crisis started, before the arrest, before these calls cutting out the line of succession, it was William maybe that was one of the strongest voices in wanting to cut Andrew off. But what happened?
Well, certainly the crisis before the crisis, maybe. I mean, it's been a long and drawn-out process, this. But certainly, yes, as I say in the book, that after the BBC Newsnight interview that everybody knows about how disastrous that was, it was William who was the loudest voice in the room, saying that Andrew has to be banished from the family. He, both publicly, privately, his association with the royal family would be a stain on the family. And certainly he thought that he should be outside of the picture before the rot set in. That's how it was told to me. And I think that tells you an awful lot about William's state of mind and the fact that he is not only trying to protect the family, but also has one eye on the future. This all affects him and his family. And, 6 years ago, hindsight's a wonderful thing, or perhaps not. And it could have been all so different.
It's amazing his involvement, and you wonder what his involvement is now in coming weeks. Let's speak about last Thursday. So it was very early in the morning. I probably like you guys, we saw the photos emerge, and there was I think it was 8 vehicles drove into Wood Farm where he's living temporarily. Now I called the palace and said, pretty likewise, and said, what on earth is going on here? I don't think they knew. And it later transpired that even the king and the palace didn't find out about this arrest until it happened.
But this is part of the whole story from here on out, and it goes to the crisis that the royal family is in. They need to be seen, as the king said, this legal process now needs to play out in a way that doesn't look like Andrew is getting any special treatment at all. And in the same way, the royal family not getting that notice, that's part of that. Andrew is being treated as a regular citizen who is under suspicion of wrongdoing. And so it was an incredibly dramatic day because of that. I think that we've seen over the years, bar some major flashpoints, the royal family does have a lot of control over the narrative and then can plan out their responses to things from there. But on Thursday, you did get the sense it was just a completely uncharted waters day. They were completely spinning out of any sort of reality that they'd been used to. And so seeing the King's statement, which came just shortly after the arrest, again, just extraordinary moment when we actually got that news that he had been arrested. And then the King's statement right after that, and then having to get on with the day. And the Queen was out as well. It must have been extraordinary within the palace, wondering how to play that out from there, because I don't believe they did have that notice.
Well, I think I actually quite like the statement, Russell. Quite like it said a lot. It said, we are concerned about what's happening with Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. He was saying that we need the law to take its course, but we will carry on, going out and carrying out with our service. We touched on it earlier, but we had quite a lot of royals out on that day, Bronte. We had the King out there.
And the Queen was out, but the service to you all, that was a really important part of that statement as well. I think that really packed the punch right at the end, because that is all they can do now. As you've said, this process is going to play out now. It may be a very drawn out one, but the royal family now needs to continue going on and showing that they are fit for purpose and that there is transparency and that they're able to represent something for people. And if they're not getting on with their job, then it goes further to the idea of that rot that Andrew had created, and it kind of spreads that poison. But so they need to see that there's stability over here. They're getting on with the job. They're in service to us. It's not just all about Andrew. It's taxpayers are paying for this family. They need to be shown that they're out there and they're earning their keep.
The bit that struck me in the statement was the very short part of saying, "Let me state clearly." I mean, there has to be a distinction now between the royal family and Andrew. Andrew's a private citizen. He's got himself into this mess. There's discussions about who will pay for his legal fees. Understand that he is responsible for them. But what are his finances like? And so will the king be under pressure to facilitate any sort of legal bill that comes his way? I mean, that will be perhaps further criticism after putting him up. So I think the royal family are in a bit of a bind at the moment, and you're right, these conversations will be carrying on at pace at the palace.
They're in a bit of a bind. We use the word crisis quite a lot.
Yeah, but it is a crisis. You can't don't underestimate what's going on here. There is, it's very, very serious. The allegations are very, very serious. We've only just scratched the surface. We have 10 police forces and agencies in the UK looking at this. I'm sure we can't see it later, but in terms of the government statement about removing him from the line of succession, they've also said that won't take place until after the police investigation. So you could be looking at this dragging out for many years. And so the royal family need to try and work out a plan of what to say and do at the right times.
And you do get the sense as well, of course, Andrew always denied any allegations of wrongdoing, but you very much get the sense in the last few days especially, that dam has burst, because we're seeing there is action now in so many ways, because we've ripped off the first bit and now, they're going to release the documents related to his appointment as the UK trade envoy. There is conversations about him happening now in Parliament where that would not really have happened about
and
the royal family.
The language being used is so punchy. I mean, Sir Chris Bryant's standing up in Parliament, calling him entitled, privileged. This goes against all convention of previous generations where the royal family would not be criticised. And there are members of Parliament standing up and saying, right, now is the line in the sand. Yeah. We are going to rip off the Band-Aid and really delve into this. I mean, gosh, God knows what could be unveiled in letters and memos. It could get pretty ugly.
It's exposed the royal family in a way we've never seen before, and the problem is there just doesn't appear to be an endpoint, because, as you say, there are all of these assessments going on. There is now a legal process with Andrew being under investigation on this one charge at least, and the one allegation. And so, yeah, it's that feeling of these things are all, I'm going to use the word, bear with me, but it is unprecedented. The way the royal family is being spoken about in relation to Andrew is unprecedented, and there does feel that there is action going in so many directions and you just cannot see where this all ends at this point. And that must be unbelievably stressful for the teams at the Palace.
Not so calm.
Not so calm.
There's two things that you mentioned. The MP Chris Bryant. I say there's lots of vitriol coming out, and we haven't seen that kind of stuff openly in Parliament about members of the royal family working or not, or disgraced or arrested or not. We've never ever seen that kind of behaviour. They could have said that before. Let's be honest, this has been going on for 16 years. It feels like there is a massive pile-on at the moment. There's no libel laws in Parliament. They could have weighed in before. And what that brings to me, the fact is that the scariest thing, or probably the most damaging thing for the royal family, is if there's a disappearance of deference.
Absolutely.
If it's now acceptable to speak about Andrew, and then what next? The King, then William. I mean, that for me is what I think would be the biggest fear for them.
Because how do you put that back in? That's out. If this is the way we're speaking, and as you say, it was very strong language. If that is happening, and that criticism is something that becomes normalised, well, where does it end? And where does it end? Where do the calls for transparency in different areas, where does that end? And so much of the monarchy exists on the way that there is some mystery around it. It's the majesty of it. And so if this continues and a lot of of course, I do believe all due investigations should be unfolding when it comes to any allegations of wrongdoing, and that needs to be looked at. But more broadly, the royal family, where does it all stop in the calls for transparency in any direction?
Because they've got to wait for the police investigation, obviously.
Yes.
So
you can imagine.
And carry on with engagements.
Yeah.
Keep calm and carry on.
Yeah, keep calm, carry on. I don't think it serves anyone well to open the floodgates of undue criticism. If members of Parliament think there is something to say, whether that's about funding or whether that's Andrew's role as a trade envoy, that is absolutely agreeable. But however, are you going to open the floodgates of just complaining about issues with the royal family? It's a pretty dangerous path.
Generally, I think the royal family are probably in one of the most dangerous positions they've been maybe since the death of Princess Diana.
Yeah,
I really think there's the impact-wise. We're talking about endpoint. Will this ever end? I think Andrew's probably feeling the same. Will this ever end? But line of succession. So this has been muted over the last couple of years. What else can you do to punish Andrew? But the government has said that at the end of the investigation, they will consider legislation to remove Andrew from line of succession where he's number 8th. Is that just politicking?
I thought, it's a bit performative that did it need to be said at this week? It seems as though there are just, what can we say next? How can he be punished? I think that the picture on every single newspaper in the world and news site, everybody has seen it, tells you a lot about the situation that the royal family and indeed Andrew finds himself in. There is a calling for Andrew to be punished, until the end of time. But I think we need to have a bit of perspective and say, let the police investigations take their course. There are, as I said, several being assessed at the moment, and it's up to the royal family as well. And these things will take a lot of time, so it's almost giving false hope that it will happen overnight.
I mean, as the representative of Australia, your Prime Minister has come out and said that
it's not like Albanese to get out the blocks very quickly on a royal issue.
Yes, a self-appointed representative of Australia. I think our parliamentarians might have an issue, but that's fine. I'll take this one, guys.
Did you think it was performative from Albanese when you heard it? I mean, was there a clambering for him to make a statement
I would say
on behalf of the government?
So many people have been asking about the Australian mood in this situation, because obviously we've got the temperature over here in England, and I would say it's very similar. And there is a catastrophe would have to occur for Andrew to ever become king. Obviously, 8th in line, he's not going to become the king. But I can understand that there is also among the public, every time we're hearing a report about it, it is reminded that he's 8th in line to the throne. And just the very principle of that is something that infuriates people. And that is very much the sentiment in Australia, as I think it is here. I think that Anthony Albanese getting involved at that point, why not? Look, he's laid down the cards. Obviously, I don't think anyone thought that there would be opposition to a proposal to remove Andrew from the line of succession. He's made the point that Australia will not stand in the way of that. I don't think it's a surprise. But as you say, is it completely necessary for the conversation to happen right this second, now that the arrest has just happened and there is a legal process that now needs to be followed? I don't know if it is.
I think that's what needs to take precedence.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Andrew should be removed from the line of succession. There's no way he should be a Councillor of State even though the language had been adapted to say that it would only be working royals. Well, just take him out of the picture. People don't understand this, so they will view inaction as the royal family don't have an appetite to do it. But I think that certainly the police investigation should absolutely take precedent, both for the authorities and for the royal family as well.
I do understand the optics though, and I completely agree with what you're saying, but it is also the optics right now where it does feel quite chaotic. There are all these stories about Andrew. We've also, it now is being collaborated with all these stories from the years past about, him making staff members cry, him being a very difficult person to work for. Obviously these are not criminal allegations, but it more broadly paints a picture of a man who lives a life of entitlement. And I think that is part of the optics of, that scramble of thought of what can we do to prove that we take this so seriously in the line of succession and the fact he's in line to the throne, however far back he is. I do understand why people are calling for that.
But that's bad for the royals, because if you start scratching the surface of privilege and entitlement.
Exactly.
And it's difficult because, of course, the King and the Prince of Wales live in palaces and castles. Of course, William and Catherine have moved to Forest Lodge, but that's the perception, isn't it? Fly around in helicopters, have money at your disposal to go to Mustique if you want. But if you start scratching the surface of this, then there'll be more questions to be asked. Well, why don't you get a train? Why do you fly in helicopters? And I do think that's a pretty dangerous situation for the royal family. It
is dangerous, and you're right with that as well. Because if you get to the 8th in line, you think, well, he's never going to become king.
Sure.
So why have a 9th? Why have a 10th? Why have 11th? You'll just salami slice large elements of the royal family, and what will be left with.
Exactly.
Now there was a poll. So apparently, I'm told that support for the monarchy has fallen to 45% after this. Everything that we will move on from Andrew to maybe some lighter stories from the week. But with 45% support for the monarchy, are we heading towards the end of the monarchy or vast changes in the monarchy? What do you think, Bronte? Is a revolution in the air?
It is so hard to tell where this all ends. It is so hard to tell where all this ends. And because of that, it's impossible to say where their popularity lands at the end of all of this process. With that said, it's a critical juncture for the royal family. It is a crisis like I don't think they've ever seen before, as you said. But I think there is a way through it. I don't think it's necessarily the end of the monarchy. I think that people do separate Andrew from the royal family. They see William and Catherine out on engagements and they're not thinking, oh, well, they're all cut from the same cloth. I don't think that people have that perception of the royals. But it is a dangerous time for all the reasons that we've mentioned, which is there is a general perception of the lack of transparency in the royal family and things that were allowed to go on under the roofs of the palaces. And the royal family exists with that trust from people. And if there is any perception that they can't be trusted in terms of, there's these allegations about Andrew's finances when he was out as a trade envoy and charging things to taxpayers. All of this builds up into a narrative that is extremely dangerous. And so when it comes to whether the royal family survives it, I think it is how they continue from this point onwards. But it is very hard to see how it all ends.
I mean, let's make no mistake, this is a hugely serious situation for them to find themselves in. Of course, it won't be the end of the monarchy. I think that they will weather the storm. The King has got out. He's made 2 unprecedented statements in as many weeks. He could not be clearer. Indeed, he said that. The law will take its course. You have William and Catherine are the modern royals, and so they will want to perhaps speak out when the time is right. I think perhaps you could interpret William's statement about being calm how you like. Maybe it was about Hamlet, maybe it was about the situation, maybe he thought that was wise to get that out there. We already heard about how deeply concerned they were. But of course, they will weather the storm.
But just briefly, there has been a few news stories this week about Andrew. Bronte, have you seen the stories about him claiming back on taxpayers or billing taxpayers for massages? It just gets grottier.
It does get grottier. And again, it goes to that idea of trust. The public puts an enormous amount of trust in the royal family, and that's why often these questions aren't asked. But then when you go retrospectively and look at this, the fact that he felt that was something that he allegedly felt that was something he could do, charge that sort of thing to the taxpayer. He's not a man that had no money. Even if he did, definitely don't do that. That's not the use of the public purse. But at the same time, it's just that feeling of, he's lived a whole life of thinking there was one set of rules for him and a different set for everyone else. And it just paints more of the picture of Andrew that we've been getting, especially in the last few weeks. And it is grotty, exactly, that's the right word for it.
Grotty. And Andrew's new life, or,
lack of it.
Yeah, he's under house arrest, basically, up in Wood
I see in the papers today about him being stopped riding.
Yeah, I mean,
this is possibly the only thing he has. I mean, he's been kicked out of his house. He hasn't got a job. And of course, there's absolutely no public sympathy for him. But to be stopped riding, to be seen out in public, that speaks a lot about how the palaces viewed him, sort of riding around Windsor, waving to people in his car and so forth. I think the lack of introspection about how this has damaged the whole family has been Andrew's undoing as well. So, what next for him? I mean, he's only 65. I mean,
he's 66 now.
He's 66. Yeah, it was his birthday, of course. Yeah. So what is he going to do for his days? And in this case, he's going to go on for a long time, so it'll be interesting to see not only the developments, but what on earth he ends up doing.
But just a quick one. You mentioned there was a raid on his 66th birthday. Do you think that was deliberate from the police, or am I just being a little bit naughty there, thinking he's not had the greatest reputation with police officers and police protection officers and behaving with his flunkies and his staff? Do you think that let's do it on his
There's no love lost, I'm sure, with anybody who has worked with Andrew. This is the constant allegations of his behaviour, bullying behaviours, entitlement, and what have you. I think if you look at what happened to Peter Mandelson this week as well. Cops swooped in, arrested him after there was rumours that he was going to flee. Perhaps something had happened in the last few days where they felt they had to move, and I'm sure that arresting him on his birthday was just an unfortunate occurrence for him and only him.
A coincidence.
Perhaps, yes.
Yeah. Let's speak briefly about Harry and Meghan. I said the other week, we got to the end of the show, because it was all about Andrew. I cannot believe that we have not mentioned Harry and Meghan. Now, they've just gone to Jordan, so they've just flown there. I think for 2 days. We'll see some lovely pictures and lovely video, and I think it'll be an interesting kind of trip. There's no need for them to get into this debate, is there?
I think that in the same way that the Prince and Princess of Wales did not release a statement after the Kings on the day of the arrest, even if Harry and Meghan were here as working royals, if you can imagine that, in 2026, there would be no need for them to release a statement, because this is, as we've said, this is now a very delicate situation as it unfolds legally. The King has made the stance of the palace clear. Harry and Meghan have no ongoing relationship with Andrew that we know of, so there's no reason for them to weigh in. And if they did, it would be, it'd be putting their head above the pack and opening themselves up to extra criticism.
Yeah, I think they're damned if they do, damned if they don't, because no doubt, let's say they take part in a broadcast interview with American broadcaster or local broadcaster, any journalist worth their salt is going to ask them, how do you feel about the crisis enveloping your family at the moment? Do you have an opinion on it? If they don't say anything, then they've been silent. If they do say anything, then they're involving themselves in a situation which their own family and the palaces are desperately trying to manage, and have no idea of what is going to happen next. So it's a difficult. I do think it's a difficult situation for them.
There's no love lost between Harry and Andrew. I don't think they've ever been close.
No.
And I think he's mentioned that in Spare, or that he's mentioned that in the past, that they're not exactly, bosom buddies or close pals or anything like that.
All those claims were out there about Andrew, obviously, after the Newsnight interview. And Harry's book came out a couple of years later, but obviously before this latest, with the Epstein files. But even back then, he did write in his book, as you say, he mentioned the sex crimes and the shameful, he used the word shameful, so it's very clear if he's willing to put that to paper, even back then, that there is no level of closeness between the pair.
Do you think in many ways they're vindicated in getting out, getting away?
I saw this in a comment piece this week, and it was sort of, Harry has been proved right. This family is absolutely toxic from the inside. Harry had his own reasons for leaving, didn't he? And I think they were formulated many, many years ago, certainly not necessarily in the whole Meghan era. He's always wanted a different path, and certainly I don't think it's anything to do with Andrew. He'd probably be wise to keep his counsel in this sense, especially because there's police investigations as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating, this family.
It is, yeah.
Absolutely fascinating.
And we are living in a truly unprecedented time. This is extraordinary. The King having to make a statement after his brother was arrested, ensuring the public that the law will take its course. I mean, it's an incredible period.
Someone tweeted me or X'd me, whatever you call it, after the flurry of storylines over the weekend, or the flurry of stories over the weekend. Someone tweeted me next to me and said, "I'm bored with this storyline."
Yeah.
It's not a storyline,
No,
but
it's
feels
actually
like
happening. Yeah,
it feels like it's an HBO production or some kind of Netflix series. If it was, some of these storylines are absolutely outrageous.
You really cannot have imagined back when 2020 was unfolding and there was all global drama with COVID and all that, but we had Harry and Meghan leaving the royal family, and it felt like the most explosive possible thing to hit the royal family. If you fast forward 6 years and honestly look at this headline, like it's crazy to even wrap your mind around it. I won't be bored of this storyline for a long time, but again, it's because we have moved into such an unprecedented era, and you never really know where it's going to go. Like,
everybody's got an opinion on it.
Yes.
Absolutely everybody.
Yeah. Well, let's bring some light into the proceeding, shall we, Russell? I want to talk about your book.
Thank you.
I'm going to quickly grab it. Yeah, I've got it down here. I've actually got 3 copies.
I know you've got more copies than me.
He carries it around. He just carries it around like that all the time.
3 of these copies now. I'm going to get one signed in a minute as well, if that's all right.
Very kind.
I'll just keep this down here. Tell us about the book. I mean, I remember you disappeared about 6 months ago, and we didn't hear from you for a couple of weeks, and it turned out that you were putting this book together. It's a great read. What I like about it is it is a love story at the end of the day. Although they are, the future king and queen, and really see them out on engagements, you detail how they kind of got together at university in the early days and how they worked together. What did you learn most about William and Catherine in your book?
Well, an awful lot. I mean, when I was thinking about writing a book, I couldn't believe it had been 10 years since a joint biography had been published. So, that was an angle. But I went into it with an open mind, and I thought that you tell the story of the inside behind the scenes of what had happened and how they'd experienced, these huge flashpoints of the last few years. Not only Catherine and the King's cancer diagnosis, obviously the Andrew situation, Harry and Meghan, but also, the Queen's death and how that had made me change their view and their perception, their vision for a modern monarchy. But it really did fall into the category of a love story. So I went right the way back and charted, from the moment that they met and how that changed and shaped both of their lives. And I think that you look into their very, very different upbringings and to who the people are, who they are as people today, is a really interesting story to tell.
Well, it's called William and Catherine: The Intimate Inside Story, and in the past, there's been a lot of myths that I think have come out about the couple, and one of them was that Catherine and her mother somehow conspired to send her to university to snare the prince. But what I found really interesting, you wrote what actually happened.
Well, that was an underscored by the Crown, which is why so many people think that is the narrative. But certainly, I did want to correct some of the issues if they'd come up. And Catherine had met another teenager when she was on her gap year with Rally International in Chile. And she was thinking about changing university. She wasn't necessarily sure if she wanted to go to Edinburgh because a lot of sort of the old school set, the old public school set were going. And she met another teenager who convinced her to go to St Andrews. And that sort of corrects that narrative of, was she chasing the prince? I'm sure there were certain individuals who did change their course and even change their life plan to follow Prince William to go to St Andrews, but it certainly wasn't Catherine.
Can't blame them for shooting their shot. They gave it a go.
It was really interesting going back into the weeds of the old coverage and back in those times of interviews with young women who had changed their course to try and snare a prince, perhaps. But a really interesting period.
One thing I did like was, feel free to talk about it, one of the things I liked was the difference in decision-making between William and Catherine, because throughout, and we'll talk about it in a minute, about there's been some dramas, obviously, and there's been rows, with Harry, there's been fights with Harry, etc. But there seemed to be William and Catherine approach things in a different way, which I found surprising.
Yeah, certainly. And what it did surprise me as well is how much of an integral part Catherine is with the institution. I think that a lot of people think, of course, she's one of the most famous people in the world, one of the most photographed, she's glamorous at all stages, whether she's visiting the Scouts or a state banquet. But what came up time and time again of speaking to people who had worked with them for years was how invested she is in the process, how invested she is with the vision of the monarchy. You know, not even necessarily their vision of becoming a future king and queen, but she is very interested in the future of the foundation. She's very across the strategy. And I think what really surprised me is how much William relies on her. You know, not just professionally, they work together most days, but also personally and emotionally as well. And there are certain flashpoints you can look to, whether it was their breakup or whether it was issues with dealing with her cancer treatment and diagnosis, that there was a real interesting point of how solid they are as a couple.
We talked about the problems with the royal family at the moment. Everything's on their shoulders. I mean, do you think from reading from the research you did, do you think, as you were saying there, that they are prepared for it? Or that they know what their kind of role is as the future of the royal family?
They've definitely got a vision of what they want, and they've had to adapt to that, of course, because I think that certainly when you talk about slimmed down monarchy, the king would have absolutely thought that his brother would have been involved, Andrew, and he would have wanted Harry and then Harry and Meghan to be involved. So the slimmed down monarchy looks a little threadbare at the moment, but they do have clear thoughts on these big issues. It was interesting to research and find out and speak to people who were there at the time of the differing views of when the Harry and Meghan saga was kicking off.
Right,
okay. William was intensely saddened at that time. He thought his brother would be there with him by his side, be a team player. And yet Catherine was able to take a back step and think, you know, when you look at it, the fractiousness of their relationship wasn't created by Meghan arriving on the scene. The cracks started to appear in their adolescence and their adulthood. The discussion about who would take the military, who would do Africa, and in terms of their charity work. And she was the one to be able to say, you know, let them leave. If they don't want to be here, then you need to step away. And there needs to be a nucleus of the team. And I thought that was fascinating to discover.
Yeah, I mean, this foursome. It should be the centre of the royal family. That should be the one.
Well, I think the Fab Four was sort of a media creation, wasn't it? But there was certain excitement in the palace, and I tell through the eyes of the people who were there that there was excitement from William and Catherine. There were obvious differences. Catherine described Meghan as having a touch of California about her. They dressed differently, they acted differently, but there was excitement, and there was excitement for Harry. But there was obviously this clash of styles, and when it didn't work out, there was at least the introspection from Catherine's point to say, this cannot, take over the running of the royal family. We've got to have one eye on the future and our roles. So if they don't want to be here, then let them walk.
You get the sense, this is something I always wonder about William and Catherine, they're obviously so family focused. And William was born knowing, well, from the age that he could understand it, he knew he was going to be the king, and then of course Catherine married into it. Do you get the sense, because we've heard so much about how he wants to reign as a king, that it's an acceptance of that being their life, when the sad day comes that the king passes away, or is there an enthusiasm for bringing in the next era, again, with the understanding that it comes with...
Yeah, no, certainly. William does not want to become king earlier than he needs to. He has said himself, I think it was for the Queen's 90th birthday, he doesn't lie awake at night thinking about becoming king or even Prince of Wales, because it means a member of his family has passed away. But undoubtedly, he is serving an apprenticeship at the moment. He's learning from his father, but he's told Eugene Levy, I want to bring about change for good. But what does it mean for a modern monarchy? They have their way of doing things. They have absolutely had a decision to make about how they bring their children up. Their view is very much centred on, if you get the family nucleus right, then everything else will fall into place. The deal with the situation with the heir and the spare is not just an issue for the British monarchy. I think it's monarchies all over the world. And certainly William and Catherine, but William went through it. He did not want his children to go through what he went as a child. One of them with a predetermined destiny, and this spare, Harry, just being allowed to sort of get on with what he wanted. And that really it created problems for them sort of all throughout their adolescence and adulthood, and unfortunately, led to the path of Harry leaving the family.
But where do you stand on the Great Kate debate? Because if we ever say Kate on this show, our viewers, rightly or wrongly, pick us up and call it Catherine. We had Kate Manzi on the other day who was talking about Kate. But I remember in there, I think when Kate, Princess of Wales, was first introduced to Paddy Harverson.
Yes, yeah.
He was introduced by William, this is Kate.
Yeah, and even in the engagement interview, he spoke as Catherine, as Kate. It has been the palace, and of course you can understand, Queen Kate might not have the same ring to it. Apologies for any Kates of my wife specifically, but it's a decision for her and the palace. But I think, when people do obviously get very passionate about this subject on social media, I think that you can calm the levels down a bit, because while she is known as Catherine now, she was absolutely fine by being known as Kate.
And she'll be Queen Catherine.
She will be Queen Catherine, of course. Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, this is it. This is William and Catherine, the inside intimate story. Oh, sorry, this is William and Catherine, the intimate inside story by Russell Myers.
Thank you.
All right.
It's a great read, Russell.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And right, finally, we have time for our quickfire questions.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay. Is it a quiz?
It's a quiz. No, he's going to go into no. There is no prize.
This is the prize.
There is a prize for humour, right? Because we laugh about it later, but you don't actually get anything. Right, so actually this is a section from your book.
Oh, right. So I better know it then.
Better. This will be very embarrassing for you.
With William joking that he wanted to call his firstborn Rodney or Graham, what would be the most inappropriate name for a royal?
Can I answer? It's got to be Andrew. Imagine if they had another royal baby and there's no. It's a firm no. It's a hard pass on any future Andrews, probably for 500 years or so.
It's wild because we won't have any Duke of Yorks anymore. Maybe we won't have any Andrews.
No Andrews.
No Andrews. No. It might sort of go into the history books like Gary. There's no Garys anymore, are they?
And that's a
maybe Rodney and Graham would have been very funny.
I think we both agree that Ernest and August are good names.
I love them.
Yeah.
Love them.
They've chosen well.
Yes, yeah.
They're great
names. They're good names. King Charles awarded the University of Edinburgh, where Princess Anne is Chancellor, a Queen Elizabeth Prize for higher and further education. But which member of the royal family should he honour and why?
They're all out there doing a lot of work. It's
got to be the Duchess of Edinburgh. Can she get any more on it?
That's a good one.
We share a birthday. So
you're biased, is what you're saying.
I am absolutely biased. But I think that, especially what I think will happen in the future, is that the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh will be elevated in their roles because slimmed down monarchy. But my vote is for Sophie.
I think that's a good one. I'm gonna steal his. That's lazy, I know, but actually that is the right answer.
So two votes for Sophie, but no humour with this answer.
Sorry,
that's fine.
No. There's not a lot of them left, Matt. I don't know how many people can be honoured.
All right. Inspired by the BAFTAs, what's your favourite royal film?
Oh, I love The King's Speech.
Yeah.
That's such a great film. I've seen it a few times now.
I'm going to say, though, I watched this Harry and Meghan type film. I can't remember what it was called. It was called A Modern Royal Romance or something.
Was this the Lifetime one?
It's, yeah.
Yes.
It's the worst acting you've seen in your life, but it is the best film you've probably ever seen.
Worst acting you've ever seen. They weren't in it, though, were they?
They were not in it, but it's people essentially playing their role, an American princess and a bumbling British prince.
I've seen it.
It is wild.
Actually,
so, it's called something like that, a royal romance.
I actually recommend
Check it out.
Oh, terrible, but in the best possible way.
Well, there's plenty of films, and the last 4 or 5 years, there's plenty of scripts now that could be turned into amazing Hollywood movies and dramas.
Bring the crown back. I mean,
even from the Newsnight interview, I think there were 2 films, weren't there?
Yeah, it was Scoop, and what was the other one?
You've put me on the spot now.
There's a Netflix
but
one
this era here will be immortalised in film, I'm sure.
All right, well, thanks, guys. Try and calm down, and I don't imagine next week's going to be any quieter than this one, but let's see what happens.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for coming. Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive, A Busy Show. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments below as usual. And remember to subscribe to us here on our new Royal Exclusive YouTube channel for the latest royal news. We'll see you next week.